What's up, guys? Zan for Forward Progress Madden. And in this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I normally do. And the reason is well, we're kind of hitting the Madden off season, and there's been a lot of conversation, whether you're an Operation Sports guy, the Gamers Lab guy, Madden Tips, any of the forums that you happen to read and post at, there's always conversation in the months from basically between May and August. And that's what we kind of consider the Madden off season. There's always a lot of heated debates about what the game needs to be like, who needs to do what jobs, whether the game is realistic enough, what's over effective, what's not effective enough, just a variety of stuff. So, what I'm going to talk about in this is a couple things that I've noticed and discussed over the past week. And I've discussed this with a lot of people. In this video, I will not name names. Some people may be able to figure out who I'm talking about. And I'm not going to be talking about anybody in a negative limelight because I think ultimately everybody plays the game a different way, and that's fine. But what I think everyone needs to remember is that we all play the game with an ultimate goal that we all want the game to play more realistic. That goes for whether you're a tournament player. It goes for whether you call yourself a sim player. And to be honest with you, I hate those two classifications. We all play the game of Madden. And whether or not you have the opinion that certain players play the game, quote unquote, right or wrong, has no valid bearing on making the game more realistic. So I'm going to provide a couple contexts, and I want you to think about something while I'm talking. And this question is the most important question of this video. Do you think it is more sim or acceptable? You can use either word interchangeably. Do you think it's more sim or acceptable to leave something out of the game because it's ineffective at the NFL level? Or do you think it's more sim or acceptable to leave something out of the game because you think it will be abused and over effective compared to what it is in the NFL? Think about that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a conversation that I had. I normally am just a kind of a peruser over at Operation Sports, but recently I've tried to get a little bit more back and forth because that's my job as a game changer. I'm comfortable over in my main posting place, which is TGL, Madden Tips, Compete Forever. Those are kind of the guys that I know a little bit better, but I'm not doing my job as a game changer if I'm not willing to listen with an open mind to nearly anybody in the community. Not nearly anybody, everybody in the community. So I go over Operation Sports. And, there's a lot of people there that are good posters. There's a lot that are very opinionated. There's many who, frankly, I think don't know hardly anything and they just talk in circles. But I try to keep an open mind when I go over there. So I go over there, and then there's this thread talking about the no huddle in the NFL and the no huddle in Madden. And of course, they're complaining about, the speed of the no huddle, how the defense doesn't get back. I totally agree with that. We're talking about how fast the pace of the no huddle is in Madden. The defense doesn't get back fast enough. You can get offside calls. You get different encroachment calls sometimes, just little random glitches in the game. And I agree, that needs to be fixed. But then, they're talking about what they were facing as far as a no huddle and why it's not acceptable that should beat them. Now, I'm not going to make this into a sim versus tourney debate because, like I said, I hate the two classifications. I want everybody to think about it in terms of a Madden simulation, making the game as sim as possible or realistic as possible. I'm not going to say the word simulation. Making the game as realistic as possible versus what actually happens in the NFL. So, kind of think about that when you are listening to this. So, this person was upset that they got beat by a person who ran the trips tight end, read option, QB power, tight end streak, and I believe there was a play with the tight end slant out, the quick slants play. And in the thread, I went ahead and posted a way that they could have stopped the slant out because they were having trouble stopping the slant out, and I was met with different sorts of replies. Some actually thanked the post. Others basically discredited what I was saying because I am a quote unquote tournament player. But all that aside, what they were talking about in this was adaptive AI. They were saying, well, this person was running only a set amount of things. You need to be ready. Your defense should catch on after 2 or 3 times of seeing it and just automatically jump it, regardless of what you're in. And, I've heard this term, adaptive AI. I've heard it thrown around a lot over the past year and a half. And, it sounds fine because, I guess players, they want their players to just all of a sudden recognize things and automatically play them the perfect way after X amount of times of seeing it. And they call it adaptive AI. And see, I don't think adaptive AI is the correct term. When you're talking about adaptive AI, you're talking about human thinking. And I'm sure there is critical thinking and all that involved. I'm sure there's technology out there that could be implemented that involves critical thinking. But I think basically what these guys are talking about is just how the player should automatically play a certain thing after X amount of times of seeing it. So I went ahead and I'm using this context. Okay, so at what point are we playing the game versus at what point is the game playing for us? Now, there are players out there that have limited amount of stick skill, a lot of stick skill. There are players that are great play callers, some that are terrible play callers. Some make up for their terrible play calling with their stick skill. Others make up for their lack of stick skill with their great play calling. Everybody's a different Madden player. But I'm still asking, at what point do we stop playing the game and what time versus when does the game just start taking over for us? Because what I propose is in a real football context. If you play in the Tampa 2, Monty Kiffin, Rod Marinelli, Lovie Smith, John Gruden, all those guys who have been, Tony Dungy, all these guys who are Tampa 2 coaching tree guys, they all agree on one thing in terms of adaptiveness. Freelancing earns you the bench. You tell a player to do his job. So let's go ahead and use a Madden context versus the rules of real NFL realistic scheme. If you're running the Tampa 2 as your main defensive scheme, your outside corners are in what is called an MIR, and that stands for mandatory inside release. And this is something that the Packers know and have always known about the Bears defense going back to the Favre days. And what they would do is they would come out in doubles, and they would run double slants because slants are breaking to the inside, and they're just going to play what the Bears are giving them, that double inside release. So the first slant runs straight into the linebackers, pulls them over the middle, and then that backside slant behind it gets wide open in that gap that's left. Basically kind of like a variation of a trail concept. So let's say we run that. That's our scheme. We run it over and over and over. And let's say our opponent comes out and slants us 6 times down the field. By that adaptive AI logic, after X amount, it doesn't matter whether it was 3, 4, 5, 6 times, they want their corner to jump that. Well, that's what I call freelancing. And all of a sudden, any good player is going to figure out, whether it be in practice mode, just playing the game, getting reps, that after X amount of times of doing this, all of a sudden a DB will adapt or a linebacker will adapt. And you change up that route, and now you've got a big play. Some people call that part of football, but my question remains the same. At what point is the game playing for us versus at what point are we playing? If I tell a DB, if I give him a specific play or a specific assignment, I want him to damn well play that assignment. Just like any coach in the NFL would make an adjustment pre-play, would want that player to carry out that assignment. If a coach in the NFL said, hey, I want you to make sure that your DB does not get to the sideline on this, and make sure that's your job, your only job, make sure that receiver gets an inside release, and they try to jump a slant route, that guy better find the bench. But you could use that analogy in a variety of contexts. So let's talk about cover 3. So let's say in the cover 3, you want your defense, you basically are trying to stay inside of the outside receiver. You want him to only have the sideline. You want that quarterback to be able to have to throw just an absolute gem of a pass, drop it in on the sideline, making a miraculous catch. You want to stay inside so that way you can jump 2 verticals at the same time if the quarterback decides he wants to do it. If a player fade, throws the ball outside, and all of a sudden your DB adapts and plays outside of that outside receiver, now he's giving up 2 inside receivers to the center fielder. That's going to make that center fielder's life a living hell. That's what I'm getting at with adaptive AI. At what point does the game start hurting us rather than helping us with this adaptive AI? Because realistically, it's simply going to be like a math problem. 3 or 4 times, it triggers, then you switch it up and abuse it a different way. Now, some people may agree with that, others may not. Some players may say, well, that's football. Other players may not. I don't think it's realistic when you tell a player, hey, I want you to do this and this specifically, and he does whatever the hell he wants. That's not football. What point is there in having a coach on the field if players can just go out there and you call a play and they all freelance? And you can say what you want. That I'm not accurately describing adaptive AI, but that's my opinion. Next thing I want to talk about is kind of going back to the original question. At what point, or is it more acceptable or sim or realistic for EA, us as game changers, you guys as players, to have something left out of the game because it's not effective in the NFL? Or is it more acceptable for it to be left out of the game because of the fear or the thought that it would be over effective in the game? So let's go ahead and use a context that I've seen or I've talked about over the past couple days. And that's a tweet that was sent to one of the Madden developers, and we got to talking about it, and it was a pretty heated argument. I won't lie. It was a heated argument. So what we were all saying was, well, is it right to allow packaging for wide receivers at halfback or certain skill position players to take direct snaps? And my argument is this. Regardless of what your viewpoint on the topic, on whether it should be allowed, doesn't change the fact that it's present in the NFL. And that if your mission statement, whether it be you're a game changer or a player or a sim player or a tournament player, your ultimate goal is to make the game play in the end or eventually like you see it played on Sundays. So if that's your mission statement, but then in the same breath you can say with a straight face that you don't want something that is actually done in the NFL, absent of whether it's effective or not, you say that you don't want it in the game because it will be too effective, then you're lying to yourself. Do you want a realistic game that plays true to what you see on Sundays, or do you just want a game that plays perfect for you? So let me bring up an example. I'm more of a fan of coaching my players after I break the snap. So on defense, I come out in something and I start, hot routing players all over the field, putting them in different assignments, do some really crazy stuff. And I tell them, this is how I want you to play this play. And then the next time I come out, I may have them do something completely different just to throw my opponent off bounds. That's the way I play. And I consider that sim. I mean, coaches are rarely going to give you the same look twice in a row. I mean, it's happened, but I mean, mixing it up is part of the game. So somebody brought up the fact that an old 2K game had the layered play calling on defense. You call your defensive shell, so whether you're cover 2, 3, 4, cover 1, and then you call your blitz package and your line stunting. And then you tell your underneath coverage what you were in, whether it be man or zone. And they said that is a better system than what we have in Madden. And I thought about it. Sure, I really like being able to have the freedom to do whatever I want with certain players. But is it more realistic to have the play calling that way? I think it is. But is it going to take away my freedoms post-snap? No, not really. I think it's better to have the tiered play calling system Whereas before, I actually thought it was better to have, just call play, whatever the play is, and then make your adjustments as you go. But I think I went into it with an open mind. And so that's my argument, is that, if something is present in the NFL and you want to make an NFL simulation, it's probably best to have it that way in the game, whether or not you like it or not. It's still the way it is in the NFL. Sure, play calling is being changed every day. Chip Kelly, uses cards and symbols and hand motions and all that stuff. But by and large, there are many ways to make play calls, but that is a very, very common way. So I'm going to return to what I was saying. The stats don't lie. You can look at Pro Football Focus or Football Reference or any other advanced statistical football database. They're out there. There's some for free, some for pay. You can watch all 22 film on NFL.com. The stats do not lie. There were hundreds of attempts by non-running backs rushing the ball last year. There were direct snaps to non-quarterbacks. There were times where there were two quarterbacks on the field at the same time. I mean, just a variety of different packaging. Why? Because the NFL is going from basically a 3 yards cloud of dust. Three things can happen when you throw the ball and two of them are bad. It's going from that mentality to, hey, let's just get a bunch of athletes on the field and see what happens. Try to hit some home runs occasionally. And I remember back when, in 08, people complained, oh, the speed option in the Atlanta playbook, that's not realistic. It never happens. Players in the NFL are too fast to defend that. Well, I'm going to say is look at where we are now. We're in an era where, Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, RG3, Mark Trestman even said Cutler's going to run a little read option this year. It is what it is. We're in an era that is different. And to say that this is defining football, this is what football is, when every single day we are testing definitions of what football is or proving definitions wrong. I mean, I remember when Bro Namath caught hell for using a tight end in the backfield. And a year later, Aaron Hernandez is taking a significant amount of snaps as the tailback for the Patriots. We test the limits of what is realistic or allowed in football every day and every year. So just think about that. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on where we're going with the game. And this isn't even a sim versus tournament debate. It's a simulation football, creating a simulation football game using what we see in the NFL. So think about that and let me know what you guys think. Is it more acceptable to leave something out of the game because it's not effective in the NFL? Or is it more acceptable to leave something out of the game because you fear that it may be over effective in Madden? Talking about wide receivers at tailback, halfbacks at quarterback, stuff like that, packaging wise. Because last time I checked, we all are in this together. Whether you play a sim style, a tournament style, casually, whatever. You want the game to be kind of realistic because we're all football fans. This is our getaway, our way to, I don't know, very few of us played NFL football. I never did. But it's a great way to get that release and feel, it's not playing NFL football, but, you get to play a little bit of NFL football. And you want it to be realistic or seem realistic to what you watch. And, we all have that same goal of making the game more realistic in the end. So let me know what you guys think on that. And if you haven't rated or subscribed, feel free to do so. I'm going to try to do more of these videos where I actually put my face to it, get a name with the face, go on the record with stuff like this. Because it really doesn't matter what your play style is. If you play a certain way, it doesn't matter. You want the game to play more realistic in the long run. A tournament player will tell you that. A sim player will tell you that. It doesn't matter. If you want the game to play more realistic, it doesn't matter how you play the game when the game hits shelves. Ultimately, you're working towards that goal in the future of having a more realistic game compared to what you see on Sundays. So let me know what you guys think, and I'm looking forward to your responses. Thanks.